Let's see if this really is like the fake ad.
It's not.
Developers of Last War Survival actually created the game that—
No, they didn't.
Really play this game, then
I wish they did though. Like, this actually looks kind of fun to play. I do want to try a game like that. I just wish that somebody could make a game like this.
Hey, did you want to make a game? Don't look at me. Stare at your screen.
I mean, I'm not sure. It just might take some time
that?
and... I'm gonna start by setting up a quick placeholder for our environment using cubes. Then let's go ahead and add a player placeholder, which will be a cube for now too. Yes, I do like cubes. And we're gonna make it walk. Yeah, not like that. We're just using horizontal movement for a game object that I call the player, and this player will hold all of the individual soldiers that move with it. The only difference being that soldiers should flock around the player and move as a unit. I'm gonna create a 3D hat in Blender, make it blue, and add it to my character. Okay, tiny hat actually looks kind of cute. We're gonna revise a lot of stuff that we create now in the beginning, but I'm just gonna leave it all into the end so that I can start by putting together a prototype and a system, and then we'll go back and actually just revisit some of the things. So we have a lot of work to do. Let's create a shooting system. For the game, I will just create one type of bullet, but its speed and fire rate of the weapon will be affected by which weapon the player picks up. Stop. Let's make some enemies spawn at a spawn point and move towards the player. This is what it will look like when the game starts. Wait, no. Let's try that again. Oh, I know exactly what the issue is.
My people need
Your people don't need you. Stop being ridiculous. I mean, at some point, even the spawn points started attacking the player. All right, now it works. I've enabled physics by adding a rigid body component to them. Now they stay grounded so they don't actually float off and fly off the screen. Good, finally we have a working enemy system. I want the enemies to spawn in dense amounts, so we will have to revisit this later on and optimize it. I'm not gonna spend too much time doing that right now though. First I just want to put together a solid prototype like I said before, and then I can go all over the individual systems, which will be few for a game of this type anyway. Few. Let's also make it so that the enemies can be shot. We'll add a point system later so you can gain points by killing enemies, but also gaining buffs and stuff like that. Speaking of which, we should probably get started by creating a buff system so that the new soldiers can be spawned for the player. Alright, listen, that's a cool flip, but that's not what I want. The soldiers can now increase when the player interacts with more buffs. They also form in a circular shape for now, which I want to change to a more organic formation and make it look not so forced. But for now, this is fine. I decided to rebuild the environment to remove the separation between the lanes. I'll just make one wide lane instead, and buffs can spawn next to each other as 3 at a time, and enemies can be scattered around a little bit so that it becomes less predictable. Let's make sure that the enemies move faster and add a quick activation distance for them so that they start off by moving just straight forward to remain scattered, but then they will target the player when they're close enough to it. I made it so that the buffs also spawn much more close to each other, so together with the enemy system, the foundation of the game seems to be in. Let's work on a character model for the soldiers. I want to have a toony character, so I'm not going after realism so much. I'm gonna make some big ears and eyes and make it look a little more cute. Oh my god, this does look terrifying. The overall shape of the face is just wrong. There are some weird artifacts going around the mouth and the chin. So yeah, we'll just rebuild this. All right, so after spending like 14 hours, I can confidently say that I'm much better at using Blender because what the f was that? And this model looks a whole lot better. The eyes are bigger in general, the mouth is reshaped, and the overall head shape makes more sense. I also reworked the ears a lot. I say rework, but I basically remodeled the whole thing, so... Now, after having spent some time on that, I do want to get back into Unity. Let's not spend too much time creating 3D assets for a game that I most likely won't touch again unless you play it a lot. I created shoes, I made laces for the shoes, I made him socks, I made pants, and I made a shirt. I added details to his clothes that you won't even see in the game, and he also wears the hats. I mean, look, details are good, alright? They're needed. The small details are what the player will notice the most. You can't even see his shoes! Okay, so there's still a lot that I want to do for polishing this game as a whole. Now with our character model in, I'm gonna put together a list and get working. Alright, basically half of that list is now done. So I made a bunch of updates, and I also made so that the enemies kill the soldier when they get really close. So no more piling on top of my precious model right there. I made some additional props in Blender for the weapons buff, which are going to spawn on top of the tires, and new models for the soldier buffs as well. So let's go ahead and add them into Unity and make them work. Let's now add some post-processing to our project. I'm not gonna use these at all in the final game actually, but they're there. So if one day the game gets popular and we wanna revisit this, they're done. So working out a flocking system is apparently way more challenging than I thought it would be. I just couldn't find it satisfying to see all of the soldiers spawning in a fixed position, so I really wanted to rework the entire system. So now we have this. Alright, so with the flocking system working now, I'm gonna make sure to rig my character in Blender so that we can add some animations. Stop. I messed up the rig somehow. I think I made a mistake in weight blending, so the clothes follow the player's limbs now, like the arms. We're gonna rework the rig and create some animations. I said stop. I kept having difficulties making the rig work outside of Blender, so when I decided to enter Mixamo to just pick some animations to test my rig, I remembered that Mixamo has a whole rigging system that works hand in hand with Unity. I'm so happy and angry at the same time. We now have idle animation and 2 running animations for left and right. I only spent like 4 hours just learning how to rig in Blender correctly and actually debugging and trying to learn it correctly one more time. We're gonna need to add some text and change out the mesh for our soldier buff to the one that we created in Blender. We already made them, but never actually replaced them. I also made it so that the tires can run you over and kill the soldiers they run over if you don't take them and fail to evade in time. Soldier buffs also start at a negative number, so you can lose soldiers if you enter them without shooting at them enough times to level them up to positive numbers. New weapons are now gonna spawn based on luck. So I've made a system where a random weapon spawns together with the buff object, replacing this little placeholder cube on top of the tire. The weapon comes with chance, minimum health, and maximum health properties that affect how likely it is for each weapon to spawn, and what the minimum and maximum health will be for the buff that holds it. Each weapon also has its own fire rate, bullet speed, damage, and range. For instance, the Viper has very high fire rate, great bullet speed, but low damage and range, whereas Striker has longer range, better damage, but lower fire rate and bullet speed. Once the player gets the hang of each weapon and what it does, I want them to be able to build meta around which weapons to go for based on enemies and such. Let's take a look at the weapons. Oh god, what is that? Sorry. So I gave the weapons a blue material to make them fit the aesthetics of the game. The models aren't mine because I don't want to open Blender up again for this project. To be honest, I just did so much work in there. Otherwise, I'm gonna spend way too much time and I wanted to limit myself to a few days on this. I'm also gonna change the enemy model from a boring red cube to the player model with a red hat instead. Original, I know. I'll give it more attention later, but for now, let's just make sure that all of the different pieces are in. And right now, the game plays like this. Although the performance is dog, the game is pretty much there right now, so let's fix performance. Dear ChatGPT, hello, how are you? It has been long since we last spoke. I'm grievously sorry to bother you at this hour of the day. Hi, again. Teach me Profiler, please. So using the profiler, I'm going to check out what is putting a lot of strain on the hardware. I can hear my fans going off when bullets start to spawn, so I know something is going on there, and it's probably the fact that it's spawning so many objects. But I still want to make sure I'm getting this correctly and find out what actually is happening and what else is putting a bottleneck to this. The profiler clearly showed that the enemy spawning in and out was creating a bottleneck, because I was spawning too many of them at once as well, and I also saw that too. No surprise at all. Spawning lots of bullets was apparently not good. Unity didn't like that. I changed the enemy spawn system so that it uses object pooling instead. For the sake of ease of development, I created the initial system where an enemy object gets created and destroyed when it's killed. This puts a lot of pressure on the CPU though, because like I mentioned, we're spawning like 15 to 20 enemies at once with a 3-second long interval, so a lot of enemies are getting spawned and destroyed simultaneously. So I reworked the system to use object pooling where I create a pool of enemy objects when the game starts. So let's say I create 100 enemies right off the bat, and then throughout the game, I just enable and disable these enemies and put them to the position of the spawn point. That way, I'm not creating and destroying new objects, but just reusing enemies that are already in the game. I also reworked the entire bullet system where they are no longer objects that are being spawned. I'm instead using draw mesh instance, which is a rendering technique to efficiently draw large numbers of identical objects like the bullets. I just assigned a sphere mesh and material I created for the bullets, and now we can have lots and lots of bullets on screen all at once. I created a menu scene with a leaderboard, and as you can see, I didn't put way too much effort into the UI, but instead wanted something quick and easy to get it going. This is definitely going into the rework list if the game gets some players. So no pressure, but play the game. When a player dies, the game sends your points to the leaderboard using Unity Cloud, and that way your score is being saved where the menu now displays the top ranking scores. So the game is done. Oh, wait. So the game is done. Wow, so good. It didn't even crash once. I've added sound effects too, where shooting the enemies and the buffs will make a number of satisfying pop sounds because we want some of that satisfaction, the dopamine. The game is now available on itch.io through the link in the description, by the way, so feel free to play the game and get some scores up. You can join our Discord server to become a part of our community and chat with me and Luke and some bots for now. I just created this new server as a community group, replacing my old server. Let me know in the comment section down below and in our Discord server what game we should be creating next. I'm challenging the entire fake ad industry right now, for games specifically, so I'm gonna remake their games and make them real. But I also want to make other games, like more serious projects, so let me know in the comments and in our Discord what I should be creating next. Alright, see you guys in the comment section and in our Discord. Make sure to post what score you get, by the way, I'm curious. Okay, bye!